Miss Cordelia, I know our budget is small, but please, the children need a safe place to play. The orphanage director's voice cracked as she stood beside the broken playset, its rusted swings and splintered wood a testament to years of neglect and no funding. 33-year-old Brecken Thorne knelt beside the structure, his carpenter's hands running carefully over the damage, his eyes seeing beyond what was broken to what could be. "I can fix this," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made Cordelia pause. "We can only pay $200, she admitted, embarrassed. "I know it's not nearly enough for the work needed, but—" "I'll take it," Brecken interrupted gently. "When do you need it done?" Cordelia stared at him, confused by his immediate acceptance. Most contractors had laughed at her budget. Some hadn't even returned her calls. "Really? But this requires complete rebuilding. The foundation is compromised. The structure is unsafe." "I know," Brecken said, still examining the playset. Behind him, children watched through the orphanage windows, their faces pressed against the glass, hope and longing written in their eyes. "I'll start tomorrow, but I'll need to draft proper plans first. Safety is critical with children." That evening, Brecken returned to the small house he shared with his mother, Iris, who sat knitting by the window, her hands showing the same careful precision that lived in her son's work. "How was the estimate?" she asked softly. "It's an orphanage, Mom. Their playset is falling apart. 23 kids with nowhere safe to play." He pulled out his drafting tools, expensive equipment that seemed out of place in their modest home. "I'm going to rebuild it properly." Iris watched him work, her eyes holding old grief. "You're designing it, aren't you? Not just fixing, designing." "They deserve better than a basic repair," Brecken replied, his pencil moving with practiced confidence across paper. "They deserve something beautiful." What Cordelia didn't know was that Brecken Thorne had once been one of the country's most celebrated architects. 5 years ago, Thorne and Associates had designed award-winning buildings across 3 states. But when his father died suddenly, Brecken discovered his business partner had been embezzling for years, leaving the firm drowning in debt and legal troubles. Rather than fight and destroy his father's legacy with scandal, Brecken had quietly dissolved everything, paid what he could, and disappeared. What Brecken didn't know was that Cordelia Hayes had recognized his name immediately. She'd spent the evening searching online, finding articles about the fallen architecture prodigy, the legal battles, the mysterious retreat from public life. Now she understood why his estimate had been so detailed, why his eyes had calculated load-bearing capacities and structural integrity beyond standard requirements. The next morning, Cordelia found Brecken already at work, blueprints spread across a makeshift table. But these weren't simple repair plans. They were architectural drawings of remarkable sophistication, showing a playset that incorporated sensory play areas, adaptive equipment for children with disabilities, and safety features beyond standard requirements. "Brecken," she said softly, "these blueprints, who are you really?" His hand stilled on the wood he was measuring. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. "I'm a carpenter," he finally said. "That's all that matters now." "You're Brecken Thorne, the architect. I know about Thorne and Associates, about what happened." Cordelia's voice was gentle, not accusatory. "Why would someone with your talent work for $200 fixing a playset?" Brecken set down his tools carefully. "Because 5 years ago, I designed buildings for people who could afford beauty. Now I build things for people who need it. There's a difference." "But you lost everything." "I lost money and reputation," Brecken corrected quietly. "I didn't lose my ability to create. And these children?" He gestured toward the orphanage windows where small faces watched. "They've lost everything that matters. Parents, homes, stability. If I can give them one beautiful thing, one safe place, that means more than any skyscraper I ever designed." Cordelia's eyes filled with tears.
The budget is still only $200. I can't pay you what you're worth." "You're paying me exactly what I'm worth. Worth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in purpose." Over the next 3 weeks, Cordelia watched Brecken transform the broken playset into something extraordinary. He worked mostly alone, though sometimes orphanage children would sit nearby, watching quietly. A 7-year-old girl named Poet began bringing him water, her shy smile reminding him why this work mattered. "Why do you make everything so careful?" Poet asked one afternoon, watching him sand a beam to perfect smoothness. "Because you deserve careful. You deserve to know that someone took time to make something beautiful just for you." Poet was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Nobody ever made anything just for us before." That night, Brecken worked by floodlight long after he should have stopped, his mother's words echoing in his mind from earlier. "You're punishing yourself for what happened with the firm, with your father. You think if you work hard enough for free, you can atone." Maybe she was right, or maybe he'd finally found work that fed his soul instead of just his bank account. The revelation came when Cordelia discovered additional plans in Brecken's truck, designs for expanding the entire orphanage, adding rooms, improving safety, creating spaces specifically designed for children's healing and growth. "You've been designing all of this?" she asked, holding the detailed blueprints. "Why?"
Brecken looked uncomfortable. "I couldn't help it. Once I started seeing what this place could be, the ideas just came. But I know you can't afford any of it. I just needed to imagine it." Cordelia studied him carefully. "What if I told you I've been sending your orphanage playset design to donors? That 3 foundations have already expressed interest in funding a complete renovation based on your vision." Brecken stared at her, shocked. "What? Why would you—" "Because your work deserves to be seen," Cordelia said firmly. "Because these children deserve an advocate who understands that architecture isn't about impressing rich clients. It's about creating spaces where humans can thrive. And because sometimes people need to be reminded of their own worth." 6 months later, Brecken stood in the completed orphanage playground, watching 23 children explore equipment he'd designed with love rather than profit. The sensory garden bloomed with textures and colors. The adaptive swings accommodated every child, regardless of ability. Every surface was safe, beautiful, intentional. Poet ran up to him, breathless with joy. "Mr. Brecken, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen." He knelt to her level, his throat tight. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever built for." His mother appeared beside Cordelia, both women watching him with quiet pride. "He's different now," Iris said softly. "Lighter, like he's finally forgiven himself." "He gave these children more than a playground," Cordelia replied. "He gave them proof that someone sees their worth. That's the most valuable thing an architect can design." That evening, as Brecken packed his tools, Cordelia handed him an envelope. "The foundations want to hire you to design similar spaces for orphanages across the state. It won't make you rich like before, but it'll make me richer than I've ever been," Brecken finished quietly. "Thank you for seeing what I'd forgotten, that the most important buildings aren't the tallest ones. They're the ones that shelter the most vulnerable." He looked back at the playground, where children played in golden sunset light, their laughter the most beautiful sound he'd ever designed for. "My father used to say that architecture is frozen music. I spent years creating monuments to wealth and ego, but this is the song I was meant to compose." True success isn't measured in awards or recognition, but in the lives we touch when we choose purpose over prestige. Sometimes losing everything clears the way to finding what truly matters, not building for those who have the most, but creating beauty for those who have the least.
The most profound architecture doesn't scrape the sky, it lifts broken spirits. It doesn't showcase designer vision, it shelters vulnerable hearts. And sometimes the greatest structures we build are the ones that remind forgotten children that someone, somewhere, believes they deserve beautiful things. Worth isn't defined by what we've lost, but what we choose to build from the ruins. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.